On August 5th, 1980, cinema projectors were given a new movie tape to put into their projector, and after the popcorn had been bought and theatre seats found, the movie started inviting people into the world of Friday the 13th. Okay, cut it out, you do.
Welcome to Fright Night.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Where you son of a...
No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
Study
of the dead.
The Friday the 13th franchise and its titular star Jason Voorhees are probably one of the most famous images in cinema history. A hockey mask is now possibly the best known symbol of the genre, and even people who don't know who the mask's owner is knows it as a recognizable symbol. He's as famous as James Bond or King Kong, and has the highest on-screen body count of any horror movie character, and was the highest in cinema with 170 until 2014 when John Wick came with his newly franchise, having killed 306 people in his 3 movies as of October 2021. Over 12 movies, Jason's gone from his home base of Camp Crystal Lake to Manhattan and then down to hell, and then up to space and faced off against fellow slasher legend Freddy Krueger. Played by 10 actors, from Golden Age stuntman Ted White to horror enthusiast Kane Hodder, over 29 years with his latest appearance in 2009. However, a question asked is why he's so iconic. Why have people continually come back for the next Friday? It's common knowledge that the movies aren't great. I've been watching all 12 over the last 2 months, and I think this is a good summation.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
That is...
Critics have been continuously giving bad reviews. Just look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores. But people just kept coming back. Something about these movies keeps drawing people in. Not to say it's uncommon for bad movies to keep getting sequels. The Fast and Furious franchise just got its 9th installment.
Hey guys.
It's just that even to contemporary audiences, the movies started to get dull, the blood and guts cut by the MPA. In this episode of Start of the Dead, we're gonna go into why Jason Voorhees became the icon he did, and how his brand of terror is remembered today. The franchise was the brainchild of producer and director Sean S. Cunningham. Cunningham had been working on small projects for the decade prior, producing and directing a variation of unsuccessful movies, and at some point working on softcore adult films. This was until he worked on his first horror movie, producing the movie Last House on the Left.
Keep repeating. It's unbelievable.
Directed by future Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street director, the late great Wes Craven. This was his first success, the rape revenge movie making $3.1 million off an $87,000 budget. Encouraged by this, he then started on his next movie, Friday the 13th, coming up with the title, and thinking he can easily sell to producers. Before even a script was written, he took a full page out of Variety with the image and title of the words, "From the producer of Last House on the Left comes the most terrifying film ever made." Then he contacted writer Victor Miller and said,
And Sean called me up and said, Halloween is making incredible money at the box office, let's rip it off. That is keeping it real.
John Carpenter's Halloween was currently the talk of Hollywood. Costing only $325,000, it had made $1.2 million from the 198 theaters across the US, including 72 in New York and 98 in Southern California in its opening weekend alone, and went on to make, in the following time, to make $47 million. This set a new precedent for horror movies, after the relative freedom for directors with the 70s New Hollywood. Studios now could make horror movies dirt cheap, but reap massive rewards at the box office. Blood sold, and after Halloween brought in the subgenre tropes together, Friday was one of the first to birth in the 80s reign of slashers. With the note that the movie was going to be a slasher, the movie found producers fast, with many looking for a piece of the new goldmine that was slashers. Frank Mancuso Jr. agreed to produce and would become a sort of showrunner for the next 8 of the 12 movies. Due to most of the production being based in New York, many of the cast was selected from Broadway productions, and filming started in September of 1978. The film was shot around the townships of Hardwick, Blest, and Hope in Warren County, New Jersey. Camp scenes were shot on Boy Scout Camp No-Be-Bo Skull, which is located in Hardwick. The camp is standing and still operates as a summer camp to this day. Sort of.
The story in Friday
The movie came out at the perfect
is that
time.
it's so
40th US
profound.
President Ronald Reagan would become president the following year, at the time was running his campaign. The very conservative politician entered an era of pearl-clutching, particularly in cinema, and in his past he had been a...
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
yeah, an actor. He wanted to shut down all violence and sex in cinema, and stirred up a lot of controversy for Friday the 13th. Tom Savini's makeup making front-page news for the wrong reasons. But this wasn't bad for the movie.
At the movies, or this week, or next at the movies, or coming up next, the film that had the biggest opening weekend of any box office movie this year. Our next movie is Friday the 13th.
Siskel and Ebert review tried to combat this and actually gave away the twist ending, but this didn't really matter. The precedent that Friday the 13th was setting was that people weren't going to see the movie for the plot. It was for the more animalistic imagery of violence and sex. This just to say that Friday the 13th was a success and resulted in the first greenlight of a slasher sequel, which was released less than a year from the original. Part 2 had to be bigger and better, and with an increased budget, director Steve Miner could do that. However, what the sequel is most famous for is introducing the titular star of Jason Voorhees. It's an often forgotten fact that Jason was not the main villain in Friday the 13th, with instead bringing his deranged mother Pamela Voorhees to avenge his death. The sequel has Jason coming back as a surprise survival of his lake incident, and avenging his mother. It's messy, and that turned a lot of the original crew away. However, Jason can be seen in his earliest designs. Instead of a hockey mask, there was just a bag over his head, inspired by the movie The Town That Dreaded Sundown. This of course wouldn't stick, and he wouldn't find his iconic look until the third installment. This third movie is probably the more forgettable entry, except for a few features. Part 2 had also made bank at the box office, making about the same as the first, but producer Frank Mancuso Jr. wanted yet a bigger budget, and so made it 3D. 3D had become a growing movement in the early 80s, 70s gimmick at the time, that wouldn't really come into its own until reimagined by James Cameron in 2009 for Avatar. But the main star in the movie, other than this, was that this was the movie where Jason got his mask. Behind the scenes, it's not entirely clear who put the mask on Jason.
I think it was Frank about the mask.
I'm sure it was Steven.
And I must admit, in modesty, that I put the hockey mask on Jason.
It seems what happened is everyone wanted a new mask, with Fear Street not having come out yet, and the image of a bag mask not fully recognized. Some of the crew were hockey fans, and so a hockey mask was suggested. And makeup artist Marty Becker created an altered mask from one of the 3D supervisors, Martin J. Sandoff, and a 1950s Detroit Red Wings goalie mask. This doesn't necessarily explain why the franchise did as well. Even the kills got tamer and cut down as the MPA started to take more focus towards the franchise away, threatening the dreaded X rating. So it has to be said that Jason was who was bringing the audiences back. Which was confusing because Jason didn't talk. That was his thing, even if not original. Upon rewatch, I realized no character from the original franchise is given more emotional backstory than Jason. He's the only constant. Unlike Halloween, where the villain Michael Myers is a seemingly soulless machine, with nearly no characterization and the protagonist, that's Dave's sequels, having some level of motivation, film students take note. A common theme in horror movies, considered great, is that they're often allegories for something else, and by extension, relatively serious. Aliens is an allegory for sexual violence, and The Exorcist really is a story of a mother watching her daughter die in front of her. The movies, whilst good, are relatively upsetting, not fun movies to watch with your friends. Friday is the relief from that. A good comparison is that they do to Halloween what Sharknado did to Godzilla. Yes, they're both relatively the same in description, but one is massively better than the other. And here's the actual genius of Friday the 13th. The franchise comes in and has made Jason an icon. It's not that he has 12 movies, it's that he's all that's there in those 12 movies. And by Mancuso and Cunningham coming up with this tragic backstory that's never really explored, it comes with a sympathetic character for Jason. The bad writing lends itself here because Jason doesn't talk, but all the soon-to-be victims do, and they suck. They're all either dumb or boring, all due respect. This distances us from them and makes us inevitably identify with Jason, who is the ultimate underdog fighting back. He's the bullied kid who grew up to be 6'5", 275 pounds, and there to take names. In a hierarchy-based 80s society, this was the story of an underdog kid's coming to the cinema. But throughout this, it's never serious. The sillier movie is viewed as the better in the series. It goes from Jason silently stalking someone, to hitting someone with a sleeping bag against a tree, to hitting someone with a sleeping bag against a tree, against another person sleeping in a sleeping bag. I mean, which movie do you want to see? Saying this, I'm reminded of the argument of Martin Scorsese that created so much controversy, that Marvel movies aren't cinema. He described them as more roller coaster movies, which is fine. They're capital M movies, not cinema. You go to the cinema and turn your brain off when you see them. And again, this isn't bad. The recent Netflix movie Army of the Dead, I can assure you, isn't joining the Criterion collection anytime soon, but I still enjoyed it. These are what the Friday the 13th movies are at heart. And you have to look past all the stunted line deliveries and the questionable story decisions. You'll see that they're fun.